All right, we'll call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Welcome, everybody. First item on the agenda is additions and deletions. I don't think there are any expected changes, but I will mention that as the last item on the agenda, we'll go into executive session. We'll be talking about the union contract, the final union contract. And so we'll do that at the very end.
I would like to make a change to do introductions at the beginning of the meeting instead of at the end.
I think that's a great idea. And so with that, we were gonna do that, I think, as part of the town administrator report. So maybe we'll do that now,
Right at the
and
beginning?
I'll ask you
Yeah.
to do that.
Sure.
All right.
Well, I would very happy to introduce their newest town employee. Is Joy Dubin-Grossman. She's the assistant town administrator and joining me in the town administrator's office. So very, very happy and welcome, Joy. And please stop in and meet her officially anytime you can. I'm sure you'll have a lot of interaction with her in the future. So, you're welcome.
All right. Good.
All right.
And was John going to come in or not?
I don't think John's going to
Oh,
be
okay.
in, but he's also our other new employee, John Titus, is finally compliments a full complement to the highway department. So they've been down short for about 18 months. So we now finally have a full staff in the highway department, and very much appreciation goes towards Mike Anthony and Tom Boyven and Dominic Musamici for all the work that they've done to fill the gaps. So.
Shorthanded for more than a year, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, good idea.
Thanks.
The next item is a discussion regarding the July 4th celebration, which is also aligned with the 75th anniversary of the Hinesburg Fire Department. So we have 30 minutes for this item. It does say it's a discussion, and I think I'll speak to the Selectboard. Last Monday we had a meeting, and this had just come up in Front Porch Forum, and there wasn't a Selectboard member that knew anything about it, and we didn't know what was happening. So we said, let's find out what's happening, because we're getting questions, and my phone's ringing off the hook. So just sort of curious about exactly what's going on. So we asked the fire department to be here and the rec committee to come. And so maybe we start off with, what is the plan? What's the official plan at this point?
Okay.
Don't
Why
all
don't
jump
you-
up at once.
Yeah, maybe come on up.
Sure.
Guest of honor,
I'm the
celebrate.
closest.
And assuming there is a plan and it's not just a idea being floated out there.
No, it's not just an idea.
Okay.
Not just an idea. I believe this goes back about
I'm sorry,
2
Frank.
years.
You maybe
I'm sorry.
should introduce yourself.
Yes. Frank Twarog, the rec chair. As I go back in my mind, I think it was about 2 years ago. We were approached at the Rec Commission about our opinions regarding moving the celebrations of the 4th to the 30th so as to allow greater participation from other agencies and individuals related to members of the first responders' families. And the thought that if it was on the 75th anniversary year put on the Saturday, that it would likely grab the most participation. Speaking for myself, I can't speak for other members of the commission, but with that request, it really was a deference to them and a no-brainer for me as the best appreciation that I could extend to that organization and the other first responders. It seemed that in other years there had been circumstances that changed some of our regular celebrations, whether it was a couple years ago when rainstorms forced us to make a last-minute decision to move the fireworks to the following day from when we normally did it, to other considerations for weather events. So it didn't seem to be, in my mind, a great break. Certainly the spirit of celebrating is preserved, but a very important consideration of our appreciation and celebrating the 75 years was the strongest focal point to me. It didn't cross my mind personally that we would not kind of revisit the issue and that it would build momentum and discussion among others. So I apologize to you all and the select board for not being aware of things sooner. We are, as I understood it, you were looking at the last week of January. So I think we're well ahead of the timelines of things to make announcements. And if there are other proposals out there, I would leave it to others to weigh in.
Maybe, Jan, or you could give a history on the rec committee's involvement in the 4th of July?
Sure. As I understand it, I think I've been on the committee for 15 years or so, 16 years. It was somewhat split around the time I started, where we would do a lot of the morning type events. The fire department had a lot of the afternoon chicken barbecue and efforts with members off of our committee for fundraising for fireworks. Then there was, over a course of time, less participation, I think, in the chicken barbecue from families than had been sort of the norm and the custom from decades prior. And that was dissolved. Around that time, or maybe the year soon after, the fireworks organizers passed the baton to the Recreation Commission because I think there was some volunteer fatigue. They had taken it upon themselves for many, many, many years, and we sort of forget pre 9/11 that was a burden that was not just a financial fundraising, but also personal participation in the fireworks. So then it became a professional organization. It became more expensive with that. I'm sure there was an insurance component to that that increased costs, but yet they continued to do the hard work to fundraise, and they raised huge amounts of money and kept up with it. I think memory serves that Doug Mead had been one of the primary volunteers on that front. So after he and other members, specifically I believe of the fire department, asked others to take over, we tried to form a specific fundraising committee for the fireworks. It may have been even called the Fireworks Committee. And that maybe lasted 1 or 2 years. There was still a lot of participation from others in the community, and we collectively as a town made it work. Then when that committee dissolved from lack of participants, the Recreation Commission took on that task, sort of under our name only. We individually didn't do a whole lot more ourselves, but the whole day seemed to come under the umbrella of the Recreation Commission. And I believe that's sort of the history. I couldn't give years to these events, but I want to say, if I were to guess, 5, 6 years ago was the 4th of July committee that maybe lasted 2 years. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, okay.
There's been broad volunteering going on to make it a day for everybody. But candidly, that sort of midday to early evening participation in the town has dwindled down to virtually nothing. So we, as the commission, really focused our energies in the, say, 10:30 to 2 o'clock window.
So the parade.
The parade and the things related to the parade, musical events. The library does a book sale. The Historical Society puts on a demonstration. There have been quilt exhibits and history exhibits. There's been a little bit of annual struggle about figuring out what food might be available. Sometimes, I mean, we lost a little bit with the Boy Scouts, but we picked up another retail vendor over at the school for food. And then for a number of years, there was a fundraiser event behind the community school for children to play games, dunk, tank, and the like.
The auction, isn't that when it is? Is it auction?
Oh, yeah.
There's a
There's the auction.
on the here.
Yeah. And so all of the kind of coordination of that, of making sure that the appropriate people, was that the responsibility of staff?
It was.
Yep, okay.
A lot of these things were very last minute. We had a good sense that some of the organizations I was just talking about would do their own thing. I couldn't say that as a commission we even addressed these things. I would ask Jen about this, but I think a lot of people communicated directly to her.
Okay.
That, and of course Jen
So
doesn't.
if vendors wanted to show up, I don't know.
They would communicate through
Yeah.
with Jen.
Yeah.
Musical acts. She does a tremendous amount of work in preparation for the 4th. But as with a lot of things in this town driven by volunteerism, it comes together. And I don't think that we had a specific agenda item other than we warn that we talk about the 4th of July, but I don't remember people coming to our meetings to talk about, what the Historical Society might do or.
They just knew they might have a room. They
We'll
would
give
get a
them a room.
room.
Yeah,
or-
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the primary thing that may have changed in the time I've been on the commission is the time windows. So it's narrowed. So we feel as a commission that our responsibility is the parade, announcing a theme, coordinating grand marshals, communicating with Chief Goss about the times when the road might need to be closed. There has been discussion with him for a few years about, because there needs to be contact to the state
Yes.
well in advance. So whether we have a half hour or an hour to close, whether there would be security to help us. I've noted in my time, I don't know if it's just my observations, but there's more aggressive driving on 116. People seem to be less aware that we have a parade going on and rushing through to get to their destination. They're not going to be either participating in the parade or they want to get a spot. And so we wanted to have some security help to make sure that drop-off of children and animals and all would be okay at the bottom of the hill. But that's about as much as the preparations recently as I recall.
And then the fireworks were handled by?
Fireworks, I believe Jen coordinates with the vendor, North Star, right? In early January, they give a courtesy to us because we're repeat customers to secure the date that we choose. I'm not sure how we compare with other businesses and events that they handle, but we appreciate that they let us get in and we make sure we get our deposit to them, have a good sense of where we think the funding will be, and that has worked. They do also give us a bit of a discount for early notice.
So I know we've authorized the payment, and I think we did it already this January. Did we give them a date?
We did, but we haven't signed the contract yet, because once we became aware of some of the feedback in town, I contacted the DJ Montague and said, I'm going to have to get back to you after the select board meeting tonight.
All right, so you told them the 30th then,
Right.
and then you said, well, hold on a second,
Right.
we just
Well,
want to double check. Yeah.
That's right. So they send a contract with the date, the rain date. Everything has to be signed by the town administrator, fire chief, police chief, and nothing has been signed yet. So we're here to figure that out.
Are there any other questions? I have a couple. So when we talked about it last Monday, we talked briefly. There were a number of questions. Has the library been talked to about the book sale?
I spoke to Sarah Donegan. So several weeks ago, when I was doing my planning, all the spring and summer rec guide is ready. It's been ready for 2 weeks. It's ready to go to the printer. It includes all the July 4th information. So about mid-January, I started contacting everyone who participates in the July 4th celebration. For example, the library, the Hinesburg Public House, Good Times Cafe, all the different pieces of the pie.
The Hinesburg Business Association?
The Hinesburg Business Association fundraises for the fireworks each year now. They've
The
taken
balloons?
that on.
Is it the balloons
No,
or no?
it's not the balloons. It's the golf tournament. So last year, they were able to do the golf tournament for the first time, and then they'll do it this year. So that, they've been unbelievable to come to the table to fundraise the entire amount for the fireworks. So I did contact the various people, and that's when I think the post on Front Porch Forum and the feedback that I was receiving as well, with both via email, phone call, and in person, and even just being in town, being at the school. That's obviously stirred a lot of discussion, a lot of people that are very unhappy with this proposition. Some people are very supportive of it for the fire department. So it's a very difficult situation to be in. 2 years ago when we were asked to change the date, I do remember the meeting well. I do have a steel trap memory. I knew at that moment it was going to be a really hard decision. It's one of those decisions where, we'll make some people very happy and we'll make some people very unhappy no matter what we do. So it wasn't an easy one, but I do think compiling the feedback and having comment is helpful to make a decision. I'm hopeful that we can make a decision tonight or very soon after, so that we can move forward, so that I can forward all of my spring and summer programming to the printer and move forward and make the best of it. None of these decisions are easy.
So I'm curious, this was known, what did you say, 2 years ago this came up?
It's probably about 2 years ago.
So
one of our
why
meetings.
wasn't it talked about earlier, like maybe last July 4th, that this might be a possibility the next year?
I can't specifically answer that. I think if we look back at meeting minutes, I don't know how many people go back and look at meeting minutes, but they are posted online. So there certainly was discussion. I don't think I thought much about it last summer. I think when you're preparing for July 4th, it's so much work, there's so many moving pieces, and truth be known, when it's over, it's like, oh, thank God it's over. It's good and it's fun, and then you start gearing back up and you start thinking about it, and time goes quickly, and there are always other things on the table, quite frankly. There's always something else that you're doing. And really, I feel like you don't face something until there's opposition or, there's discussion. And it's always easy to look back and say, wow, well, we should have done a big post on Front Porch Forum saying, hey, I'm so glad you enjoyed the July 4th celebration. Next year, to celebrate the 75th anniversary, we're going to do it on Saturday, June 30th. If only I had done that last summer, but I didn't.
So if you look up on the screen, actually Joy did a little search about other Independence Day celebrations throughout the state. And so there is other examples of communities that do celebrate it on alternative days. And sometimes it's just the fireworks, sometimes it's a celebration, and combination of.
Well, I mean, the 75th anniversary is an extremely positive event. There's no question about that. The 4th of July is an extremely positive event. There's no question about that. I think I've been coming to the 4th of July for 35 years. It's always been on the 4th of July, so I get why everybody's saying, what's happening? And so, I mean, that's just, and I think the concern of the select board last week was like, well, we just found out like that day or the day before, and we're like, does everybody else know about this? Like the library. Were there any other businesses or organizations that, that, is there anybody left to be told? And is it still coming together? I mean, assuming the library said that they'll be able to do their book sale.
We will lose some people. One of the big components or one of the big pieces of July 4th is actually July 3rd. It's the Hilly Hobble race, and I believe that sentiment from Mary Eddy Stewart was compiled in the packet. She did contact me and said she would not be able to come to the meeting tonight, but did a very heartfelt email that is on the first page of your feedback. So that's a really big piece, and I think that's when I realized, when I traded emails with David Eddy, that's when I realized this is a big one. And obviously the Eddy family has been running that Hilly Hobble race for almost 30 years, incorporating incorporating 3 generations. And when David Eddy said to me, oh, I've never missed a parade in my life, it's like, oh, wow, this is big. So yes, we are going to lose certain pieces of the celebration by celebrating it on the 30th. Others we will keep, but yes, we will certainly lose the Eddy family, and I believe the public house will not be available because they'll be open for business. They usually host some activities and food and a band, and I think it also will impact Good Times Cafe, which has been a big supporter in our celebration, giving us power for our band at Veterans Park and having food for sale and that sort of thing. It will obviously impact them. They usually close on July 4th specifically to kind of serve, and be a part of the celebration. With it being obviously on a Saturday, that will obviously impact their business as well. So, we will lose some people, for sure.
Has there been any budget set aside for a plan for how you're going to advertise that it's happening on the 30th? I mean, there's a lot of people who come from out of town that,
seems like some consideration ought to be given to that.
Yeah.
So we don't have,
Well, we don't have much of a budget for advertising.
right, but I mean,
but
there
Front Porch
needs to,
Forum, newspapers, you know, that sort of thing. Yes, so that's what we would have for,
Typically, the local papers would have a list of what's happening where.
right, yeah, but I'm,
Have you considered doing both somehow? Like some towns have like Old Home Day for a week, and it is just 4 days apart. Have you considered somehow having something on the 4th that's kind of the finale of this great 75-year celebration?
we haven't. I think it would be hard in terms of, you know, I think the finale is the fireworks. We, you know, could obviously only fund one fireworks display, and in terms of doing a parade, it would be, you know, it would be, I don't know, I can't get my head around doing it twice. I think it would be tiny and tiny, or I don't know, but no, I can say that we hadn't thought of doing both, but at this point, it looks like it would be we'll think of a plan B, or somewhere to meet in the middle, or something.
Well, so we can open it up and ask others that might want to have some opinion. I think, you know, thinking about this over the week, feeling, and the board can decide what they want to do, but it doesn't feel like it's really a select board decision of what we do, that this is the rec committee who's been in charge of the 4th of July. But the fact that this is hit, you know, without, it's surprising everybody, you know, feeling like there's an opportunity here to put it all out on the table and hear what everybody has to say, and take that information and, you know, move forward. And in a way, the rec committee's already made this decision. They're moving down the avenue, but feeling like it's a chance for everybody to weigh in on it. Again, these are both very positive things, and you know, we want them to be positive events. They should be.
I have something, Phil.
Yes.
I certainly celebrate the fire department, and I think they deserve a celebration of all their work they've done, being supported by other departments coming to town. I'm disappointed that it's being combined. I'm disappointed that there was not, this has been known for 2 years that it wanted to happen, and we're just finding out now. Saturday, there's families who can't get a day off that will miss 4th of July, so they have to work. I have family that have put deposits on vacation homes to come do 4th of July on the 4th, because that's what they do every year. Had I known before, maybe things could have been switched around, so they're gonna lose money. I'm disappointed that we were not allowed to, as a town, give more input beforehand to try to come up with something that would work, so that, and you're never gonna make everybody happy, but we could have a great celebration for the fire department and still have a 4th of July celebration on the 4th, that though, for those of us that have done it for a lifetime.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, Andrew Driver, President, Hinesburg Firemen's Association. You have to forgive me, I hate talking in front of people. So, what's that?
We're not here.
Yeah. I've been taught some other tricks too. So, I just became the president just over a year ago. I wasn't aware that this had been on the table for 2 years. This kind of just came to me also recently. That being said, the reason that the request was made is because both, like everybody's saying, both events are extremely important and positive. In order for the 75th celebration to be as big and important as we think it deserves to be, we want our mutual aid departments to partake in those festivities. We cannot do that on the 4th of July because they can't stretch their resources that thin. They've already got commitments in either their own town or surrounding towns. So in order to get them to be able to partake, which is going to make this town celebration huge, that's what we had to do. That being said, for folks who have family coming in from out of town, there are phenomenal celebrations all around this area. So by no means do they have to lose money. They can still come and you can still have a great time with your family at a number of different 4th of July celebrations. But that's sort of, there seems to be a lot of questions about why was the request made, and it's really that simple. We need mutual aid departments here. We cannot have them on the 4th of July. So, in the numbers that we will on the 30th.
May I add mine? Yes, you can. And I'm not sure if everyone knows me, but I'm Tracy Tomasi Applin, and we own Good Times Cafe. And I've done a lot of thinking about this, and I do have a disclosure before we start. I am pro-celebration, so I think the more that a town comes together to celebrate both the people who serve the town and both our national history of independence and freedom, I think that makes us all a better and stronger community. And I just want to read what I had. So I began to follow some of the comments on Front Porch Forum, and that led me to call Jen today. And my biggest question was, how had this decision been made and how many people had been involved in coming to a consensus? Jen informed me that the Recreation Commission had been approached by the fire department almost 2 years ago. We've covered that, and that the Recreation Commission is in charge of the festivities on the 4th. However, the Recreation Commission has been in charge of providing and organizing festivities. It has never before been asked to choose or alter the date. To me, that's precedent. When I look at the towns that you've listed up here who've chosen different dates, I grew up in Williston. There's a history there. These are not new dates that these people are changing. So they have been following certain traditions, albeit on a different day other than the selected 4th. I think those are just really important things to remember when we move forward. I believe what's happening is a misunderstanding between the fire department and the Recreation Commission. I think the fire department should be really celebrated. I think the work that is done by firefighters is important, essential work. And I think you deserve a multi-department parade of your own with a townwide picnic and a concert in the park at a different date than we celebrate our national independence and freedom. I think we're very fortunate to be having this as a town problem right now, given all of the other problems other communities are facing, and given some of the other problems that we face in this community at different times. So I would just say that the fire department deserves a celebration of its own. I don't think it's going to be tiny and tiny. I don't think anything is set in stone that it has to be Saturday the 30th. I think it can be any Saturday during the summer when there's consensus. I think if it was farther apart for the 4th of July, that would allow people in town to have another celebration where we can really sit back and thank the people that serve our town. And then on the 4th of July, when the Declaration of Independence was actually signed, we can focus on a national celebration that brings families together. The 3 things that came out of the Front Porch Forums that I read were that people do not like to give up their traditions. People are completely respectful and honorable about acknowledging the work that the fire department has done in this town, and that people like to be asked before decisions of this nature are made. That's it.
Any other comments?
Well, we did ask, we went to the board that we thought, and we have already sent out, save the dates, we have things already lined up for that date that we've been working on this for, as a committee for 6 months or so, trying to
Yes.
move ahead, I don't, yeah, we're,
It just wasn't public knowledge, Dave,
that
so.
was, that's true, I guess, I didn't think it was gonna be that, a few days early, and I didn't think it was a big deal. So,
Yeah, it's just, it's a
It's,
national holiday, it's a huge
but-
deal.
well, I've been, certainly been involved in the 4th of July for many, many years, so.
I know, I would expect you to understand.
As far as, I don't know. I don't know what else to say. We've got pretty well committed to that date with bands. We've already contacted state fire safety. They're going to be here. A lot of other things that we've been working on already, so. From our standpoint, we're kind of locked into that date at this point. Could we have done it differently? There's probably a lot of things. I think like Jen said, it's just kind of, all of a sudden, here it is, and things happen.
So I'll bring up what somebody else has brought up, a couple people actually. Why can't we, there's still time to organize, why couldn't we do standalone celebration for the fire department? I think there's the feeling in the department that if we don't do it with the 4th, nobody will show up and celebrate. And I don't necessarily think that's true.
Right, yeah.
We were just trying to combine it.
Yeah, I don't think that's true of the department at all, Tom.
What?
I think,
That's
I don't,
said.
I don't know, I think what he's saying is we went ahead knowing that we had gone to the rec department and asked their input. They said they talked about it, they said they would go forward with us. So we started meeting, we sent our save the dates out because our mutual aid people are really important. The 75th anniversary or the 100th anniversary or the 50th anniversary of a fire service is a big deal in the state of Vermont.
It is.
And so, I mean, my feelings as a committee member and an association member is we should just do it on the 30th and you do your 4th on the 4th. But I hate to say this, I don't know how many of our firefighters will now be in town because they looked at, if we're gonna do it on the 30th after we talk to the rec board, they're gonna go with their families to maybe their old hometowns or some other place on the 4th. So that kind of worries me. Hopefully that won't be the case, but, I mean, I agree. I think we go with the 30th for the fire department and the town goes for the 4th. But it's a really sad situation for us when we went where we thought we needed to go 2 years ago, and then again in October to say, are we a go? Before we even sent our save the dates out, we asked, are we okay for the 30th of June? And we were told, yes, it looks good. The committee supports this. So here we are.
Any other comments from the board? Oh, yes, go ahead.
Just real quick.
You should introduce yourself, sorry.
I'm Luke Charbonneau, captain on the fire department. The mutual aid department, when we have a fire here in town, we don't put it out ourselves. We all know that. We call Williston, we call Shelburne, we call, Moncton. These mutual aid departments help us in this town more than ever. And Shelburne just recently had their 75th anniversary. And it was a great time for all people. Their plaque, their 75th plaque, now hangs in our department as appreciation for us celebrating it. Our departments, Shelburne department, Charlotte, we're all one big group, essentially. We all support each other. That plaque that hangs in our department means a lot to us, and we're looking forward to give them our plaque so they can hang it in their room. And I just feel like we need to put differences aside. I understand the 4th is a hard thing to take in, I get that. But we've all made sacrifices throughout the town. It's gonna go back to our traditions the next year. 75th only comes around once. And that's all I have to say.
Can I ask a quick question? When did, how
I'm
did,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yes, you can.
Thank you. How did Shelburne celebrate theirs, and when did they celebrate? How did their town work their 75th? How did that work for them?
Well, oops, sorry, I'll jump in. So they don't do a 4th of July celebration. They do theirs 3-4 weeks afterwards and do fireworks. They kind of do a 4th of July, but not on the 4th of July because they know they won't get anybody to come to it because everybody's tied up on the 4th of July.
Everyone's in Hinesburg.
Right, they do it later. So, and that's how they did that one. I don't think it was even, I wish I could tell you the name of the day that they have some name for
They
it.
have a town, like the town picnic, the town day.
Yeah, right, they have fireworks out on the
Yeah.
farm and, you know, that's how they do it. And it's later and that, then, I was trying to think, it was, I believe, August maybe when they did their, I'm pretty sure. And it, you know, and it was basically a barbecue and, you know, centric to the fire department, basically. You know, and you know, I guess what I would say probably ooh, that's the big truck. Better look again. Sorry about that. You know, I think we tried to make it all encompassing because we didn't want to detract. Didn't want to detract from the 4th of July and wanted to make it better. You know, when we think about the day of the week, I mean, I forwarded an email kind of late to you that Andrew had got from Tom Giro that Wednesday historically is the worst day for attendance for the 4th of July. You know, and this goes back to 1976 when the fire department started the parades. It was done in '76 for celebration, obviously, of the anniversary of the country, and has gone forward since then. And you know, it's been slowly dwindling, regardless of the efforts of efforts of Jen and Frank and everybody on the rec board. It has been dwindling, you know, the attendance, because one of the big reasons is Bristol has become such a very large event. I mean, theirs is huge. And, you know, where typically you would see 30, which not that fire trucks make a parade, but, you know, it was typically 35, 40 fire trucks here in town. You know, we're down to R5 and maybe 6, 7 others now, you know, because they're committing to other places. And so, you know, it was a combination of a lot of things, not trying to detract. And, you know, we think about the commerce of the day. I understand the commerce of the day, but what happens when we do it on Friday, Saturday, Sunday? I mean, it interferes with, you know, those individual businesses kind of the same way for a year. So, I mean, could we do both? Absolutely. I just hate to overwhelm the 4th with what we're doing and make it seem not as important as it is. And that was one of the reasons why we really thought about combining the two, because we didn't want to diminish the day itself by overwhelming it on a different day, and knowing that we couldn't get the participation from everybody that really wants to come to our celebration because of what it is. You know, and I think when I first talked to Jen about it, I actually first talked to Tom about it and then Jen, and you know, I guess you could say my assumption again probably was wrong, but that the word would get out better than what it did. And you know, looking back, well, we got 20/20 vision. So, you know, and I think that could we do 2 days? Absolutely. You know, the problem is we've got so many things already committed for the 30th, which I'm not opposed to doing the 4th also. I just, you know, it's a tough decision. I mean, obviously. So, but I think,
Thanks.
you know, we obviously live with whatever the outcome is.
So I'm looking for the board. I mean,
Well, can I ask you just
go
a
ahead.
clarification? It's the 75th anniversary of the Firemen's Association,
Yep.
not the department. right? It's the association.
Correct, yeah. And that
So-
was the first, when the first truck was bought.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like I said, I think some people are thinking this board is gonna make some vote today to decide, and I'm walking in here thinking, I don't wanna be doing that. For one, we're just hearing the information today, and there's probably more information out there to make a educated decision. But I would suggest, and I look for the board to, go ahead.
Well, I guess my question to the firefighters who are here is that what is important to you about this celebration? To have the parade and the other mutual aid fire trucks here and have a parade with the fire trucks?
Yeah.
And to have,
That's tradition, right.
yeah, so, and to have something happening down at the fire station. Music you have planned.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and also, if it's a combined, it will also be up. I've talked to Jamie Lee Thurston about coming, and they're kind of holding right now whether that becomes, to get him down to the ball field before the fireworks, to actually do a small concert down there. But we also we have the 40th Army Band, the multi-agency color guard from the different armed services. I mean, you know, we've reached out to some of the high school marching bands. I mean, you know, it's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, and not to say we can't do it twice. I mean,
No,
we
what I'm
can't do it
saying is,
twice.
what I'm asking is,
Why?
it's the parade and the fireworks and some events at the fire station that are important.
Right, the fireworks, not particularly, I guess.
Okay.
I would say if it's a combined event, obviously, you know. And I'm not sure if, you know, Jen had mentioned to me that we were gonna get a pretty good discount because we weren't doing it on the 4th, the fireworks. So you actually would get more fireworks for the amount of money we were spending, so. But, you know,
Okay,
whether
well,
we
that, I
do
guess
or
it
don't.
what would be
Right.
clear is if there was energy to do it twice, to be what is very important to the firefighters here that happens on the 30th, and then what are those activities that other people might enjoy, and, you know, is it possible to separate the fireworks from the parade? Because those are the two big draws.
Absolutely. Because we've done that basically nights when you've had, it's been rained out,
Yeah.
so.
So I want to say, I think the fire department was really good at getting the information out, because now that you're talking, I remember seeing last summer, maybe last fall, save the date, June 30th, and I'm thinking, why are they telling me so early? And I think you even said, we're telling you really early,
Yeah.
it seems really crazy.
It's
but-
on my calendar,
Right,
but
we
it doesn't
gave you-
say,
we gave
it
you
doesn't
all
say
cards
4th of
in your
July. It
response.
Yeah,
says,
so it
save
says-
the date for this event.
Yeah.
But what I
Right.
didn't realize was that would replace the July 4th celebration, that wasn't kind of publicized. Maybe it wasn't decided at that point.
Okay, again, so I'm gonna look at the board.
It'd be something that if we could have, you know, something on the 30th and then right on through to the 4th. I mean, you know, 3-4 days of, you know, they would put the Hilly Hobby back in session now. Would that race go back on, perhaps?
On the 3rd.
Yeah, on the 3rd, you know, we do some 30th, 1st, 2nd, the 3rd. I mean, we're talking about a lot, but we're talking about a big day. We're talking about 75 years. We're talking about 4th of July. You know, what great end caps to, you know, a week-long celebration almost. I don't know if there's that kind of energy, but there's certainly the passion to, we get we get more people talking about this than our budget meetings nobody comes to.
Which, you can stick around, we'll be talking about that in just a few minutes.
Frank has a comment.
So, yes, Frank?
Yeah, recognizing that the select board's not inclined to be making a decision because
Tonight.
right,
Right.
Or whether it is our,
yeah.
our
or and
role.
all of these discussions to be had. I want to mention a couple of things. We do have our regular meeting tomorrow night of the Rec Commission. We do have a category of new business, so I think it is fair to say that it may be considered properly warned. And one of the things that I would raise tomorrow night might be a brainstorming of maintaining fireworks where they normally might be, the Hilly Hobble, which is normally on the 3rd. But hearing what Al is saying with the agencies, it sounds to me as though what's very important to them includes a parade. And that the question really comes down to, do people collectively feel that they would be willing to consider changing the date of the parade to the 30th, but still recognize that we have a community gathering with fireworks, with large groups of people coming into the town, and maintaining that on the 4th for the fireworks. Just something that we'll discuss. And I just want to make the comment that we do live in a little bit of a different time now with the way that we communicate with each other. A lot more email and a lot more postings than picking up the phone and calling and discussing as town people when we run into each other. And this may be an example of where we're finding ourselves with digital communication. It's a learning lesson. We make mistakes, all of us. I can remind the select board of a mistake that we made as the rec commission years ago, where microburst went through on the 5th and spread trash from the 4th all the way to Moncton. And what we learned from that was we need professional help with cleanup. And I'll leave it at that.
Well, I mean, that sounds like, you know, a good solution for tonight is to go back, and you've got all this input from everyone, ideas. Yeah, you know, I certainly heard what the fire department wants to do for their 75th, and to get, you know, all these people here that they're, you know, comrades from all over the state to come here and to, you know, celebrate with them. Certainly, I can, you know, certainly could see why that's a very important thing to do. But then, you know, I'm also hearing that some of the traditional 4th of July things are important too, like the hilly hobby. So maybe there's a solution here. It may not be the easiest, and I would, you know, say the select board and I think everybody in town would be willing to support, you know, whatever you come up with. But it sounds like it would be a little bit more work, but in fact could take, you know, 2 events and make them even better than they normally are. I even heard Al say if there was a parade on the 3rd, there might roll a few trucks for that too. So, but I certainly have it on my calendar to save the date for the 30th. And now, you know, hearing what's going to happen, it sounds even more exciting. So, but yeah, I think that's what the board's looking for, you to sort of stop and come up with the best decision you can. And, you know, what's happened, everybody, you know, makes mistakes, and I'm sure that everything that's happened is a big surprise, you know, across the board. So we'll just, you know, take a step forward. And it'll be...
comment that maybe with the public listening, that maybe we can get some more support for the rec commission.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they work their heart out putting this together and doing all the things that they do, and the support really has dropped off tremendously from what it has been in years past. And, you know, the people that used to put it on obviously can't, they aren't physically able or aren't here anymore, that were the ones that really made this such a huge event. You know, the July 4th celebration in the past, and, you know, it's too bad to see it, not that it's horrible now, but to see where it's come from where it used to be. And it would be great if we could get, you know, the rec commission some more support and get, you know, get the 4th of July celebration alive and really well again. You know, because we struggle for the funding for the fireworks, you know, and it was pretty common we'd have $20,000 for fireworks, and what do we have now, Jen? 5,000, something like that?
We do.
You know, so I mean, it's, you know, it's granted it's a tale of the times where the community people, other people don't get involved, but it'd be a great thing to get everybody involved again and kind of use this in a positive way.
Anything else? Any last?
So I agree with Phil. I think, with the rec commission meeting tomorrow night, we just have a little more discussion, and I'm all in favor of respecting what you guys come up with. You've worked on it. Fire department's worked on it. It's a little tough for us to just dive in at the last moment and make a change of any kind, because somebody's gonna be affected and somebody's gonna be mad. So, whatever decision you guys make, I'm fine with. And keep in mind, it's 1 year. Bottom line.
And 2 positive events, so. All right. Thank you, everybody.
There's still budget discussions.
Yeah.
Hey, where's everybody going?
It's
my point. Headed out to buy beer.
That's
No, I would.
probably deteriorated the chicken barbecue.
Oh, they can't sell beer anymore. Yeah.
But then
Yeah, so-
why could Hinesburg Public House?
They did.
They do. They
did
are
sell beer.
doing
That's
something.
why they did
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
But the chicken barbecue used to have,
But why couldn't they? But anyway, it's,
Oh.
I don't want to take our
Because-
time now.
Okay.
the town doesn't exactly want to accept the liability.
Good. Well, hopefully, it was just good to get everything, get it all out there. The next item on the agenda is it says discussion of legal advice regarding interim zoning request. Really, maybe it's less about discussing any advice, but more about the select board's been given a potential action, a request from the planning commission to consider interim zoning, and it's really up to the select board to decide what action they want to do next around that, one way or the other. So, unless there's anything, I'll open it up for discussion.
I think in my mind, what I heard is it's probably not a good idea to go into interim zoning for a number of reasons. There's an applicant for the project. There's various criteria that need to be met to implement interim zoning, which I didn't get the impression that that's being met. And there's other reasons, but so that's just the first.
Yeah, and to that point, the objective of going into interim zoning, would that be accomplished? And in terms of the timeline and how things stacked up, it doesn't sound like it was going to, according to what we heard.
Right.
That said, though, there was the water. We did talk about water, stormwater.
Yeah, I mean, I think
And that was an
the
important
issue is
consideration.
that the planning commission has been working on all their housekeeping changes. They were first working on revising the town plan. The next kind of item that they were going to address, and are, I believe, going to address, is the village, developing design standards for the village districts. And the example, or the situation was that over the years, it had been pointed out that the zoning district referred to as Commercial District 1, I think, there's 2 commercial districts in town. One is Commerce Park and the other is up by Ballards. And that there were, at the time when those zoning districts were created, there were some different assumptions about planning and what kinds of activities or would go in there. And over the years, it's been suggested that really we shouldn't have such a distinction between Commerce Park and the other place, that really what we're going for in our village districts is multi-use and higher densities, and making a pedestrian-friendly village. And that the idea of changing the square footage for Commerce commercial districts to be in conformance with the other districts, which was something that was decided when those village districts were created, was kind of tabled and not really fully explored, and they decided they didn't want to do it as part of housekeeping changes, that it warranted further discussion because there were other issues besides the square footage about the design standards. And I think that certainly the proposal for Lot 15 was certainly something that was considered, and it was really the size of that proposal that drew a lot of discussion, and whether that's that size for any kind of commercial retail establishment of that size was appropriate for Hinesburg. And that's why the 20,000 square foot was established in the other districts, was because really people had come together and redoing the town plan to say that we don't really want 20,000 square feet. And the unlimited square footage on Commerce Park was a vestige of when it was really believed that it might be light industrial, which is and that was the beginning of what was built in Commerce Park, was a very different traffic situation and impact on the town than 40,000 square feet of retail. So I just felt like I wanted to provide a little context for it. And the situation that I think the select board found themselves in was appreciating that the Planning Commission had a deliberate way in which they were going about doing their work, and felt like that this was perhaps a mistake that had been overlooked for a long time, and to bring Commerce Park to be more in conformance as they worked on other design considerations, that at least Commerce Park could be at the same starting place as the rest of the village district. But after we did discuss with the attorney, we felt that it really wasn't going to accomplish what the Planning Commission wanted to see happen, which was higher density and smaller buildings for development in a timely manner. Now, what I think we do as a select board want to encourage the Planning Commission to consider is to move forward with design standards that are going to accomplish the goals that we have in the town plan for higher density and mixed use throughout the village. And we have opportunities for light industrial in some of those districts, and it's better described what those standards would be. So I think it was brought to our attention that the Lot 15, Hannaford's application, was going to be considered under the existing zoning regardless of what we did. So even if we had already changed the zoning in Commerce Park, that was not going to accomplish what the Planning Commission was thinking that it would. So I guess that's my feeling, is that I think the Planning Commission was, moving forward, and I think they will continue to. And I think we as a select board really want to encourage the Planning Commission to, because buildings are going to be redeveloped in Commerce Park, and there is a great opportunity to do it with our vision and not what we thought was happening 25 years ago.
Any other thoughts on the board? Yes, go ahead. Joe?
Johanna White. We don't know what's going to happen with the latest application to the DRB with regard to Hannaford. We don't know, because there are other extenuating pieces of this thing that we don't know what the outcome will be. I would think that in preparation of that piece of land, because to me, it's about that piece of land. It's not about Hannaford at all. It's about what that is and where it's located in the center of the village, and the dreams that we had. I was on the planning commission when we were dreaming about that. I don't know whether you were or not, Tom, but we saw that as a gathering place for the village, a place where farmers market could be. There would be, because there had been several companies who were unsuccessful in being able to develop it because of the restrictions, the wetland and other things. I think NRG had to go down, when they were applying for it, 80 feet to find solid ground so they could put up a 2-story building. So there are lots of things, but for me, to be prepared, to have the ability to see that piece the way when we put it on the official map, to see what if that could be, and having the interim zoning, and I know it's not duck soup. It's a complicated thing, and I totally appreciate the town being very careful about how they will spend our money, so to speak. I understand that, but my heart says that little piece of land, that's a jewel, that little piece. It could be so beautiful, and we thought of it that way when we put it on the official map. So, you know, things have happened that weren't planned or anticipated. Anyway, that's my plea.
Yes, Gil?
So my understanding of the interim zoning plan that was presented is to target Hannaford. That's the only reason. That's the discussion we have here. That's the discussion we have here.
It's not.
It's not?
No.
It's not?
Did you just hear what she said?
Yes, I did. I heard that. Lot 15, lot 15, lot 15.
That's the only lot left.
That's the only
right, so
one
we'll-
that's available there.
Yeah, okay.
And it isn't that you could have something that's humongous. The zoning says you can only have, what, 80% lot coverage? I don't know, that's why we have some people here. They're still fighting that, and it's still in the courts, and it still needs to be decided. But to jump in with interim zoning to try and alleviate this problem, I think is completely, it doesn't make sense to me. It seems targeting. It's like, okay, we're gonna do something because Hart and Mead is gonna expand. Oh, we've gotta do something. Put in interim zoning to stop it. That's my take on it.
Okay.
I've been hearing some of the same discussion tonight for what, since 2010? We go over and over and over. From the DRB to Act 250, to Environmental Court, to the Supreme Court.
Excuse me.
Okay,
but the
Can't we just let the court decide and then we'll go
They
from
will.
there?
Oh, right here. Please address the select board.
Yes. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
are you all set, Gil?
Yes, I'm all
Okay.
set.
Oh, that's good. Are there any other comments? Mark? Bill? I always say that.
He's consistent.
This time I caught it.
When are you coming
Bill.
up for re-election, Phil? You really expect them to
Just
vote
call
for
me
you?
Pouch. Sorry.
I have a couple of questions.
Do that too. Don't do it.
Take one at a time. The notice for this was actually discussion of the legal advice you got, and I'd really like to know what it was, but there has been the change of circumstances. There's been, the applications have been filed. And so what really, I really want to know, I guess at this point, is that your understanding, I guess I'm primarily asking you, Phil and or Andrea, for your understanding of the advice that of the kind of applications that were filed regarding Lot 15, and it happens to be Hannaford, but it could be anybody, for a 40,000 square foot, would interim zoning even if you did it tonight, materially impact those applications? In other words, is it a moot point now? What's your understanding?
My concern through this whole thing, although, you know, we don't want to get into any legal trouble, which this obviously looks like it could, one way or the other. My look at this is interim zoning has specific statutory requirements.
Okay, I
To
wanna know
me,
your understanding
I'm
legal
gonna,
wise.
I'm gonna keep going.
Okay.
And so when I look at this, I say, does this meet that standard? And if you read it, I mean, there's words in there like emergency and things like that. So that's how I'm looking at this. The advice we were given is more than likely it's not going to stop the reapplication of Hannaford's. And so, which it clearly hasn't done.
Well, the question is, would it, was the advice, obviously, if they want to file, I mean, they could file application for a 20,000 square foot building, okay? And that would be, if you passed the interim zoning, that would be in compliance. So the question is, would they be prevented from applying for the same size building, 36,000, with the proposed interim zoning? Or the discussion.
I think it was probably not.
Am I clear?
Yes, the discussion that we had, our legal advice was that the way in which the Supreme Court made the decision was that it was coming back to the DRB for very specific issues in their site plan and the subdivision approval, and that it would be considered under the zoning that was in place when it was first approved. Therefore, even if we had gone through the whole regulatory process for the last 6 years and changed the zoning there without using interim zoning, but the normal process, that zoning that we had in place today would not cover what their application is. And so that was really that we could have done this 5 years ago and it would be a moot point. They would still be being reviewed under the zoning that was in place of their original application. But it doesn't mean that when the DRB is looking at it that they are going to be considering the issues that the Supreme Court brought it back to both the DRB level and Environmental Court Act 250 stuff, which relates to traffic and to stormwater. And those are two things that the DRB will have to look very seriously at, and that from the town standpoint, our one of our primary concerns with when it went to the Supreme Court was what was going to happen at the intersection of Mechanicsville Road and Route 116. And so I think we as a select board are very concerned that that issue get addressed in a professional manner and not be just the decision of the judge who was not going on any kind of traffic studies that had been done about what the mitigation should be and what the impacts were at Mechanicsville Road and 116. So he just set a stoplight. That is not the normal way in which VTrans approaches an intersection change. There's alternatives analysis, there's a lot of things that go into it. And I think that's, as a town, what we want to do is make sure that all the issues are addressed that need to be at that intersection and what its impact is on the other intersections. So traffic is a major concern.
My second question actually flows into what Andrew just said, and it's a procedural thing, really, because my concerns also is stormwater and traffic, and as probably I know some of yours are. Would the select board consider, much as and I would make the same request of Planning Commission and also the Conservation Commission, write letters to the DRB at the appropriate time, expressing these concerns, the reasons for them, and to let them know, and it's obviously the DRB's decision. But it seems to me it would be appropriate for, I know it's appropriate for the Conservation Commission, and the Planning Commission has done it in the past, so I see no reason why the Select Board couldn't do the same. But,
Take that up, I think.
okay, that's all.
Can
Gil,
I say
go ahead.
something about traffic light? My impression from listening to the judge is his decision was based on there was no objection. The discussion when they had talked about something at Mechanicsville. He asked questions. He asked the amount of cost. No one among this room full of lawyers did anything to argue against it, including the Hinesburg attorney. So, okay.
All right, but
That's why we're
out-
here.
yeah, that's outside of this interim zoning. I think what's on the table is the planning commission asked that we consider interim zoning. And so now I look at the select board and to see, I think we probably should make a motion one way or the other to respect the planning commission's official request of us. Yes, go ahead.
Given what Andrea has said, I think the planning commission is at a point where she mentioned that they are considering these issues in the commercial district. And I was at that planning commission meeting where they proposed to bring this to the select board. And part of that was that, yes, Hannaford was an issue, because that's what's going to be, that's lot 15 at this point. But Hannaford was not the only issue. And it could have been any building, it could have been no building at this point. The point is that they want to look at that commercial district and bring it more in line with the other districts in the town, as Andrea mentioned. And that's, I think the select board could go a long way in supporting the planning commission in doing their job. And I think in considering the commercial district at this point is an important piece of their job, and they're taking that responsibility. And I'll say, I think the select board could support them in this endeavor. And granted, the controversy goes on, but it could be, yes, I understand the legal issues now. The zoning stays as it was, but the DRB still has to rule on these applications. The courts still have to rule on these applications. And if there is a majority on the select board that thinks that lot 15 should not be developed in the way that it is being proposed at this time, they could vote for interim zoning, and in doing that, they would be throwing their support indirectly behind these decisions that are going to be coming up, not only in the courts, but also at the DRB. So the select board, if there is a majority that would support interim zoning at this time, would be throwing their weight out there now. And we don't know how that might influence or not only the courts, these are human beings, but also the DRB, because they would take into consideration, hey, the select board just voted for interim zoning. Let's take that into consideration as we move ahead with this reapplication process. The courts are certainly going to hear of that. I don't know what Hannaford would do. There's no reason why Hannaford would need to sue the town at this point because the zoning is still in place. It wouldn't make any sense for them to do that. So I don't think we have to worry about big legal bills here. We're just, the select board could say, yes, we support the planning commission, and yes, we're behind them in considering this vision for our town, which has been in the works for years and years. So that's my take on it. That you still could have an indirect influence on this whole process. So it's not a moot point. There's a lot of energy here that can be thrown in one direction or another. So I think it's a serious vote if you do decide to vote on it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Marilee?
Just to be clear, if we did decide to vote for interim zoning, I'll just repeat what's been said before, it won't affect Hannaford's application. They'll be able to go
What's
through.
on the table right now, right, that's what we've been told.
Yeah.
What bothers me about this request for interim zoning is the same thing that bothered me the last time there was a request for interim zoning on the Black Rock property. It's reactionary. It's not planning. Planning has been done on Commerce Park. This actually follows into the plan. If the town was to enact interim zoning at this point, I agree 100% with Gil. It's targeting. It's nothing but discrimination. And I will not have my name on that in Hinesburg. I realize there are some people that don't like Hannaford. That's fine. There's a lot of people that do. There's other opportunities that can be had in this town if we just move forward in a cooperative manner. That's my absolute feeling. This has been such a cancer on our town that I do not want to be a part of anymore. Let's let it play out and be done with it. But it's nothing more than discrimination if we were to enact it.
And to add upon that, I'm not sure that interim zoning would necessarily be supporting the planning commission. I think that we can still support the planning commission and stormwater and traffic and design standards and bringing some conformity to our districts together without having to enact interim zoning. I think that work can still happen. I think that we can still speak as a board, whether it be verbally, in a letter, in whatever kind of formal or informal ways, with supporting the DRB and supporting the planning commission and what they want to do. So I'm not hearing a lot of dissent on making the town more walkable or making the town look better with design standards. Stormwater obviously is going to cost us, whether you're for, against, or indifferent about it, it's going to cost us if we don't take care of it. I think that we can support our boards and our community without having to go through interim zoning. And I don't think interim zoning is going to get us where we want to be with that support. I think it's just yet another obstacle and another pinch point that we get to argue about.
And I'll say it one more time. I mean, I'm on the record of what I think about this proposal, the Hannaford's development. I support the planning commission to look at design standards across the board to make sure the town standards are consistent and, you know, meet the feel of what the people want, and any changes they make would come to the board and, you know, come for discussion. So I encourage them to do that. I think in this case, the case for interim zoning has not really been made. It certainly looks like it's brought up for only one purpose, and that's not the purpose of interim zoning. So I'd have a hard time at this point supporting it. But I do support the planning commission to move forward with looking across design standards for not only the commerce district, but across the board throughout the town to get the districts correct. And, you know, the DRB has got their job in front of them, and this board has supported the DRB from the start and will continue to support the job they have to do and the decisions that they make.
And I would say the support that comes from the select board is them knowing that the resources that they need to have as the information they need to make their decision is where the select board plays that role, is to make sure that the DRB understands that, you know, traffic is a select board issue ultimately. I mean, it's all of our issues, and that we want to anticipate and plan for mitigation that's going to, you know, benefit us all. And we want the DRB to take the time to evaluate and have professional resources to help them evaluate what the impacts are going to be. Because, you know, certainly the state has a role in it because 116 is controlled by them. And so sometimes our desires for what we want for a walkable village are in conflict with what the state envisions for Route 116. Sometimes they're compatible. But then we have the other local intersections that are totally controlled by us, and we need to understand how what happens on 116 impacts those other intersections, and that's the role of the DRB, is to come up with conditions so that, you know, it's a change, and that change doesn't make things a lot worse. You know, maybe it will make some things better, but, you know, our job is to make sure that the DRB knows they have the resources to have a good evaluation.
Yes?
I would like to say that words are important here, and that discernment and disagreement are not discriminatory as I see them. I don't see the connection there. Plus, rather than being a cancer, this disagreement and this discerning process, I think, has built community in Hinesburg. I think Hinesburg has a reputation in the surrounding towns as being a very thoughtful town. And I think we're serving as an example right now for the process that is going on in Charlotte with the maple fields. Mm-hmm. I would not say that this is a cancerous situation at all. I welcome disagreement, I welcome discernment, and I do not like to label them as cancerous. I see this is a healthy democracy. And this is what we've had in this town, and that's very precious. That's very precious. And I don't want to wipe it out by labeling it like that.
Okay. No motion? I'm thinking a motion would be good to address the planning commission's request, the official request to us.
Make a motion to table their request? Or is that?
Or to accept their...
I would say, well, let me try this out.
Sure.
Motion to, I'll make a motion to, that upon legal advice and understanding of the purpose of interim zoning, we believe that at this time, interim zoning is not an appropriate action that we will take. Let's see, let me say that. We make a motion to thank the Planning Commission for forwarding a proposal to consider interim zoning, but at this time, upon legal advice and looking at criteria for enacting interim zoning, it does not seem appropriate.
And we won't.
Well, we're
Yeah.
not, that's
Yeah.
it. We're just not
Yeah.
appropriate at this time.
Yeah.
Do we even need a motion is the question, or can we just make the statement that Andrea just made?
Well, maybe the
I don't
motion the motion is to agree with the statement that Andrea just made, maybe. I don't know. I mean, you want to make a motion in the
It just
positive.
feels like the
You don't want to do it
planning
in the
commission
negative.
Yes, so
requested
we
us
asked it and
officially,
acknowledge
and
that
so-
their request,
Yeah.
or make a motion to not move forward with interim zoning.
Oh, there it is.
I thought I said that in a long about way.
Well, you said you were working through it,
Yeah.
so, that's fine.
Yeah.
All right.
So the motion is to not move forward with interim zoning. I'll second the motion, but I would like to combine the statement from Andrea and send that along to the planning commission.
Did anybody get that written down, or we'll have to
Close
listen
enough.
to the?
I got
Okay.
scribbles and I'll be able to.
She's
Okay.
good. She's got it.
All right.
Any
Okay.
She's
further
used to it,
discussion?
Babel.
So I would encourage the planning commission to go back to they're talking about taking a look at some of the zoning and making sure it's consistent across the board.
Well, I would hesitate on that, using that word consistent,
Okay.
because different areas, and I think that's the point with Commerce Park,
Yeah.
is that is a central place. It is really neat. I think what they were saying is they want to see higher density there. So as buildings get redeveloped, lots change, that they can, we can see more two-story buildings in there. We can see different design standards implemented there.
Maybe some mixed use.
Mixed use, exactly.
Maybe we could say something about that we don't, upon discussing things with our lawyer, it doesn't seem like interim zoning is going to get them the results that they're hoping for. On the other hand, if they continue with revamping their design standards for the Commerce Park, that we encourage them to do that and to have it be in line with our town plan. And we support that.
Anything else? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. None opposed, so the motion passed. So we hold off on interim zoning at this time. Item number 5. I don't think we're going to have, Gil, could you just stay for the budget discussion? Not one person staying for the budget discussion.
I want Gil to give a historical perspective on the parade.
On the parade.
Well, on 4th of July, because it really didn't start until about 75, right? Or 76?
That's right.
Yeah.
It was the U.S. bicentennial.
Yes, yes.
But I think some of it, or the perspective, goes back to the Hinesburg bicentennial in 1962.
Okay.
Where there
That
was a big celebration.
That's what I thought,
And
yeah.
there was a parade.
I've seen some of
But
those
that
photos.
didn't continue
And it didn't get resurrected until,
until 1976.
yeah.
Some people have said they had the impression that it covered those years, but no, it didn't.
No.
No. But everything that, well, there was a beard contest in 62.
I think one in 85 or 86 too, a beard contest.
Yeah.
Let's keep waiting for it to come back.
Yeah.
There were
In Philadelphia
differences,
tonight.
but yeah, some of the same people
Right.
were involved when it got reactivated.
I think I saw a very old picture and you were all dressed up like from the 1700s. Oh, maybe that was a historical society event.
My father was, that Revolutionary War time period.
Yeah. I think that was.
Because he was part of the beard contest too.
All right, we'll keep moving on. So the next item is really an opportunity just to, if there are questions concerning the budget, comments, we have the latest spreadsheet now, which has got the same numbers, I think, as last time. And the latest memo, too, which I think has been maybe finalized just a little bit with some final numbers.
Oh, we got some
Take audience, huh?
Yes. We guilted them into it.
Pressure.
Are there any, anything you want to say about it? I mean, the numbers are basically the same. I think there might have been a tweak here or there.
Yeah, there was
slightly.
just the numbers remain the same. The bottom line, what the projected overall tax rate has decreased, kind of back to where we thought we were before. So just a quick summary of the memo that you guys have in front of you. The overall increase in expenditures is 12.74%, which seems like quite a number. But if you look further down the memo, it explains it. The debt service is the driving factor in that increase, which makes up about 55, just over 55% of the increase in the debt service for the highway garage and the solar trackers. If you back those out of the budget, it would be reduced to a 4.79% increase. And then if you further back out the increase in workers' comp insurance rates and the increase in health insurance rates, then it's now been reduced. So that's the 4.79%. And then if you take out the new vehicles that we purchased that are beginning their first payments in FY19, it's now down to less than 1% increase. So those are the significant drivers in this year's, in the FY19 budget.
You know, that's one thing that I get confused with, and maybe other people do, is when we say the word budget, it means both expenditures and income. And the way that it it's hard. This is really that the expenditures are up, but we do have other sources.
Then we're offsetting
We're
them.
offsetting it.
Right.
And so I think that is like maybe even when we talk to the press, we need to be clear about that.
Right.
That we're talking about expenditures are up, but
Revenues
the revenues are up,
Right.
and there's ways of compensating
And the way
for
that
it.
our accounting happens, we separate them out, so
Yes.
it's not a combined thing. But if you move further on down the memo, there's increase of revenues. There's different revenue line items that are projected for FY19. And again, revenues are just a projection. But the solar arrays that we purchased, that we showed in debt service, we've offset that expense equally with the revenue that the credits will get. They may very well perform better than that, but we're feeling this is a conservative approach. And then the impact fees for the police station, we've applied $23,000 towards the debt service on the police station. And then an additional $100,800 of property tax revenue is projected from the Vermont Gas, the pipeline, the transmission line that's going through Hinesburg.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm not sure if I've asked this already or not, but the $23,000 of police impact fees that
Yes.
we're applying, why is it $23,000?
That's what the balance is to date.
Oh, so that,
obviously,
does
new
that zero
impact fees will be
it out?
collected.
You're
What's
saying?
that?
Does that zero it out, you're saying?
That zeroes it out from what it is, but impact fees are continuing to be collected.
Correct,
and so
yeah.
there'll
I
be
wasn't
more.
sure if we
Yeah.
just took a portion.
No,
We're
that's-
just taking what's on hand.
That was what was on hand right now.
Got it,
yeah.
okay, that makes sense. So it's not arbitrary at all, but rather.
Right, that is the
what's
balance.
there.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. And there's a visual representation of the budget based on the pie charts. So on the top pie chart shows the expenditure increases, and again, the debt service is the biggest piece of that. It's over 55%. And then it shows a breakdown of the other increases. And the bottom pie chart is the overall budget and the percentages that go towards each department.
Question on this pie chart. So it shows here debt service compared to the overall budget expenses at 8%, because the last one was just the delta or the increase from year to year.
Yep.
So are the police vehicles, and I'm just using that as an example, the lease is in that debt service, or is it in the police? 15?
No, it's in the police, it's in the departments. So anything that's has a repayment of greater than 5 years is shown in debt service.
Okay, so the bonds,
5
the
years and
police
under.
department still is there, the highway garage,
Right.
obviously, the solar trackers, any other bonds?
The fire, the
didn't we
The
buy
truck?
that fire truck?
That was bonded?
It's been already,
Oh,
it's,
it is?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the only things in the debt service currently
those three bonds.
are the police, the highway, and solar trackers.
Okay.
For the general fund budget, there are water, wastewater
Yes.
bonds out there.
Right.
And then the vehicles are shown in the capital budget, and so there's capital transfers out of each of those departments.
Yes,
So it's
to pay for
reflected
them.
the police vehicles are reflected in their capital transfer, highway, and theirs, and
In their own budgets.
in their own budgets, yes.
But in the expenditure increase chart above, all the new vehicles and equipment are lumped into that 25%.
Right,
And then
yes.
the salary and capital transfers,
So the salary increases.
Yeah.
And then the capital transfers that are above and beyond with just the vehicle one, so that we're
Okay.
saving a little bit towards,
Right.
the town hall.
Right,
and,
right.
Things
other
we've had,
things.
we've
right, so then I
increased.
think what I actually showed this to somebody and said, okay, what are the questions
Right.
that you're going to raise so we can be prepared?
Absolutely.
So we probably ought to, be at town meeting, be able to separate, okay, what was the percentage of salary increases and what are the capital?
Break
what
out
are
that
what-
pod.
Break out
break
that
out
pod.
that pod,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
be on some of those pages. We
Right.
just should be able to be familiar with that.
Yeah.
That's
I think,
that's a
yeah.
good point, Andrew.
I think these are opportunities, so when you guys are talking to people, make notes of
Yes.
those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, because when I say 12%, I said, but,
Right.
and then I realized what we're saying, it's
What's the bottom line?
What's the
is
bottom
what we
line is really
wanna-
what we
yeah.
want to get
Yeah.
to.
And so
I mean, we were fortunate in that, unfortunate in that we did have big increases, and a big piece of it was the highway garage.
Yes.
The biggest piece.
Right.
Which was voted upon and needed. And, a few other increases in insurance, which is not that unexpected. And then the bond, of course, for the trackers. So, we're fortunate this year that we had some income pieces we could use, like the police impact fees, the 120,000 for the
Fund balance.
fund balance
balance,
this
yeah,
year,
yeah.
and an increase in property tax from the gas pipeline. So fortunate that this year we had some increases.
And with an overall budget as small as ours, any little spike like the debt service on the highway garage makes a big in our budget. So that's really accounts for the majority of the increase. But if you go down to the bottom of the last page, there's a summary of what the proposed tax rate increase will be. And it's over last year, it's just over 2.25 cents increase on the tax rate from last year. And so broke it down further into what that would mean for a family with a $200,000 home, a family with a $300,000 home, and a $400,000, what the annual increase is, what the monthly increase would be based on that projection.
So it's 2.29 cents. So it's roughly about 4%. I'm going to do the actual calculation.
Last
yeah.
year, the
What was the tax rate last year?
was 0.4931. And again, this tax rate is a projection at this point. It doesn't get set until July.
4.5%.
Okay.
That's the bottom line. Right, and hopefully we've been conservative a little
Right,
bit.
we have been, yeah.
And with the grand list and other items, so hopefully it won't be more than that. Potentially it could be less, but we never know. This year we finally have gotten full staffing with the highway department and the town administrator position. So I think those were the only, I think we had zoning too a little bit maybe last year, a period of time.
There was a
Yes.
short
Yes,
period of
we
time.
have, we have basically
Yeah. Full staff
a
now.
full staff and a bigger staff than we've ever had.
Yeah. So And that's not a benefit to not be fully staffed, obviously, because, you know, highway department's probably making it up in unfortunately through overtime.
Right.
Which isn't good for everybody.
And it's not healthy for the.
No, that's
Right.
the
I mean,
point.
it's not
Yeah,
just the
that's what I'm trying to
financial,
say. Yeah, it's not the
right.
financial hit, it's the,
Right.
Health and welfare,
yeah.
safety.
So what we're looking for is for those watching the meeting and the two of you that are here, just looking for feedback of additional questions you have or information that would be helpful as we make our way towards town meeting.
Like what we should explain in a newspaper article or be prepared at town meeting. We'll know what our debt service is and exactly what they
Yeah,
are.
I've been working on with Missy. She's still trying to
Yeah.
track down some of that information because I wanted to have a chart to include in
Yeah.
the town report, but it
Yeah.
doesn't look like we'll have that.
But we can have it that day.
But we can have it in time for a
Yeah.
town meeting.
I think what you've been talking about, that's the things that really stand out. The chart here, and it has the percentages and,
Right,
you know, debt service is gonna be one of them.
right. The Conservation Commission increase is very deceptive because it's really, there's no increases within the Conservation Commission, but the Lake Iroquois Association is in that line. $5,000 has always been our contribution to the Lake Iroquois Association. Last year, because of the request that was voted on, they took that out of the general fund budget and combined it with the $25,000. So it looks like it's an increase of $5,000 when really it's just putting it back where it was supposed to be. So
I think it was a good process with the department managers. And I did talk to Renee and said, you know, how are they feeling? They're generally feeling okay, like they've, you know, worked this budget to sort of maintain services as expected, yet tightened as much as they could. There is the overall 3% increase across the board for town employees for this year. And for the police department, a little bit more to try to get their pay more equitable with surrounding towns, not necessarily meeting that, but
And also equitable within the department.
Yes,
Right.
that's right.
That's,
yeah.
I think, the real issue that we're
Yeah.
addressing is
Right.
that. the
New employees
new employees
versus
were hired at
yeah.
higher rates
Yeah.
than,
Yep. So that's good. We were able to sort of make that feel a little bit fairer.
It's, you know, our municipal budget's never had fluff in it. I mean, it's really been it's a pretty bare bones budget. We do a lot with the resources we have. But like I said, in a small budget like we have, an increase in debt service makes a big jump. But we're fortunate to have revenue sources to offset those increases,
Well,
so that the end result to the taxpayer.
$3.1 million, is that maybe the biggest bond the town's ever had?
Yeah,
For a municipal thing.
right. I mean,
Yeah.
not
Not
highway.
school.
Instead of,
Yeah.
yeah, right, not
Yeah.
a school and not the wastewater.
Right.
Right, and the highway is our biggest budget.
It is. I mean, if you look at that overall budget,
25%?
that is,
Yep.
the highway is a quarter of our entire budget. And, you know, the
It's the
highway.
one thing we kind of all agree on. We need to have our roads.
Right, kind of important. So.
Not always whether they're paved or dirt.
Right.
Or dusty.
Or dusty.
Dusty or salted.
But we have a very small staff here and a very hardworking staff that do a great job with what they have, so. So, anyhow, if you have any questions or you have questions in the
Right.
future, feel free to email me, email the board. Encourage other folks to do the same, and we'd like to prepare for town meeting the best way we can and really answer those questions ahead of time if we can, so. That's the goal.
And it's the 5th, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's the 5th.
And I
And
think it's
unfortunately, I think I saw that the school,
They changed it to a completely different.
yeah.
they aren't doing it on the 5th?
Well, they are, but not right before ours.
Right. Oh,
It's
okay.
earlier. They are having their
Okay.
meeting, but it's in a different room and it's earlier.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a month from tonight.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, a
Yes,
month from
4
tonight.
weeks. Exactly.
Yep.
All right, is that good? So I think it's what
Yes, absolutely.
Andrea said is a good idea to show this for the board, to show it to our neighbors or whoever, and let them pick it apart. See, make sure we have,
And look for it coming in
Answers.
your mailbox.
yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
It'll be
In a
coming
new form.
In
In
a
a new
different
form,
different
yeah.
format.
Do you want to bring them? Might as well.
What's
I
that?
had put that here. Let's just to sort of mention that the town report will be look a little different this year. It is coming in the mail, though.
It is coming in the mail. So last year, or the last couple of years, we've done it differently. So we just sent out a postcard notifying people that the town report was available. This year we get the select board received feedback, and so they decided to go back to mailing it out to everybody. However, we didn't have the money in the budget to do that because we'd reduced it based on the printer we'd used before. So we found a new printer that's going to do, the cover is going to be, sort of a little bit harder cover like the one we have currently, but it'll be more of a newsprint type of inside pages. So it'll still have the color cover like you've been used to, and the pages will be black and white. And so we'll try it. It fits within the budget that we had for this current year, and we'll see what feedback we get on this. But, so that's.
it'll be more business-like and not the photographs.
There'll be some photograph. It'll
Some
be similar.
photographs.
Yeah, it'll be similar to what you've been used to. It's just it's not the same, same cover and the same pages as before.
But there'll be
The
reports, all
content.
reports will be in there, it
Yeah.
won't just be it won't just be.
Yeah, it'll be the same pages essentially as before. The
But it'll
school
be
pages, they've shortened theirs, so there's not as many school pages that will be included. But for the most part, our pages are very much the same as before. So there you go.
We thought about giving everybody a little memory stick, but then decided, no, better give them paper.
Oh boy.
Probably be cheaper.
There's still gonna be a school portion.
Well, on town meeting day, I believe, they sent out postcards of when their meeting is, and I believe it's still at CVU. I think it's earlier in the evening, maybe 5 o'clock. Do you know?
I saw
Yeah,
something
something like that, in a
yeah.
different room, so not in the auditorium like we have ours. So it used to be the HCS budget was right before their annual meeting was right before ours, and the same now. Because of the merger, they're doing it differently, but I think they are holding it at CVU that evening. It's just earlier, like around 5, so similar to
And
the
it's
time of
just
the
an
CVU.
information meeting.
Yeah, it's an informational meeting of some sort. So,
All right,
there you go.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move on, the 2018 Certificate of Highway Mileage. Do you want to talk to this one and what we should expect to do today, if we do anything?
So, as I sent you an email, as I looked back in other minutes, it looked like there had been notes that you guys had asked about adding the Thistle Hill roads and Weed Road. But when I looked back, it didn't look like that ever happened. So we tried our best to make it happen for tonight, and it looks like we still can't get it all together. However, we are going to understand the process better and know what needs to happen. Joy did a lot of the legwork on this and came close. So there's a lot of information that you have to gather as part of that process, and you have to have the select board meeting minutes of when you took over the roads. There needs to be distances of each of the roads to put on the certificate of highway mileage. I did talk to Mike Anthony today, and he said, regardless of when it's put on, it doesn't have an impact on the state highway aid that we get, because these wouldn't be class 2 roads are the ones that we get credit for in the state highway aid. So the roads that we're talking about aren't.
Weed Road is now Class 3.
I think it's still technically a class 4.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
But it's added as a road. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And Thistle Hill's Class
3.
3, yeah.
So I basically what we had landed on is we're gonna ask you to approve it as it is presented. And, we're continuing to,
Is that something we
Get
can
that
just
process.
amend at some point in the future, or do we have to go through the process
I
again?
mean, we have to get a better understanding of that, but it looks like by, February 10th, we needed to have the select board, you know, finalize that, and then it has to be postmarked or received by them no later than February 20th.
So we
So,
can get that done for you.
based on the timing, I don't think there's a way that, I mean, tonight was the night that we would have to have had all the information to be able to add it.
I thought we added Thistle Hill.
I mean, we talked about it for
Yeah, I
sure,
don't
but I
think-
guess
Right,
we
I
never
see in the
went through
minutes.
all
Never
this
went through the
process.
But we've gone,
Right.
I've had Cheryl go through and the thing involved, and there isn't any evidence
Yeah.
that it was ever.
Done the way that, I don't think we ever saw that, all these criteria that needed to be
Right.
met.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
we did vote on it.
Oh,
We did
yeah.
accept it.
Yeah.
but
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it
accepted
sounds,
it.
yeah,
I
we
thought
accepted
we
it. No, but it's
Well,
never
we've
been.
asked,
we asked
we've
if they
asked
we
to
did.
be
Yeah.
included every
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
It's been in the
Yes.
minutes for, a
Yeah.
few times at least,
So this year we'll
This
get
is going to happen.
Yeah,
Good.
it's not going to impact
So
the
I guess what
budget.
Tom's question is, can we keep going on it right now?
Yes,
And
and
then
that's what we
send
talked
an
about.
amendment into them, or just have it in the file so
Ready
next
to
year
go.
at this time
We'll
we do
inquire
it?
about that. I
Yeah.
suspect it's probably gonna have to be something in the file that we present next year, but we can find out
Okay.
if there's any way to amend it, add it, in between the two, February timeframes, so.
Can
But
we rename it Weed Road 2?
I think it'd be it's a higher number than that if you're talking about every time the sign disappears, but.
No,
No.
I mean just the length of time we talk about.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah. Yeah. Right.
Take 5, so. But Joy and I have discussed that this isn't something that we are gonna continue it on now and get the
Yeah.
process
Yes,
and
Good.
follow through with
Great.
it, so that it's
Yeah,
not a last minute thing again next February.
right.
So we'll need a motion if we're going to move forward
Yeah,
to
and then
accept the
signatures.
2018 certificate of highway mileage as presented.
I will make that motion.
Second.
Any more discussion?
And there's always
This one here too.
yeah, whatever it's called.
Connector Road.
Did we ever name it?
No.
No,
No.
we were gonna wait on that because
Okay.
Mike's really not, there's a little, question on whether it's officially should be considered a road since it's
More of a long
more of a
driveway.
driveway parking area, but that's so we need to
Okay.
kind of talk about that more.
We
But
just came up with a
What-
name.
what's
What do you
that?
get for $140,000?
I don't know, the price just keeps increasing every week. There's more things that keep
Call it
coming.
Act 250 road.
Yeah, we
I
could.
mean,
yeah.
that keeps the
Right.
personal
So
out
So
of
that's
it.
it?
Your signatures are gonna go
Okay.
there.
So there's a motion and seconded, I think, by
Lawless
Tom.
Lane.
All those in favor of accepting the 2018 certificate of highway mileage as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and none opposed, so the motion passed. Thank you. I have the agenda
Do we have to
here.
do the warning? Pass the vote on the 2017 town meeting minutes?
Minutes, you'll
Oh,
do that
yeah,
as part of
that's-
the
that's
minutes.
in here.
That's
Yeah,
in
that's
here.
coming.
okay.
Yep.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
It's coming.
Okay, sorry.
So the
Like,
next
I was thinking
item.
we can,
Yeah, we're a little, behind the time here. We did put this item on the agenda, and just to sort of a discussion of, we had an offsite. We had a lot of discussions with Renee as she was considering, and we were asking her to accept this position, and she was wanting to and did, but we had some discussions. Hey, what's been working well? What hasn't been working well among the select board and the town administrating position? Not implying the last town administrator left because it wasn't. I mean, that wasn't what he said. But we knew there was some conflict, and Renee, brought up that, hey, how are we going to improve? And it was a desire for the board to improve with Renee, and so it's been, 3 months, 4 months, I guess. We've had a couple conflicting, the interim zoning, and now today, and so a few things have come up that, work at our personalities and underlying motivations. And so I think we just wanted to sort of touch base and see how things are going and to bring up problems that there might be and what we might do to move forward. And with that, I still have a promise to this group to come up with the meeting norms, and I have that still, and I will get that done. So that is something we can move on now that budget is over.
So I can start that conversation by saying that tonight is actually the first night with Joy being here that Renee is actually in full capacity to be able to really follow through on all of the thoughts and words and actions that we had envisioned back when we started this process. So for the first time, she has somebody she can delegate to. She has somebody who can share some of that capacity with. Everything that we will talk about and reflect upon just has to be made in the light of she was one person doing a lot. Not good or bad, just mentioning that's a big deal. and it's a big deal that Joy is here now, and we really appreciate you being here. Renee does more. Has she stopped saying thank you every single, every single. So with that said, I think there's been a tremendous amount of effort been put forth on Renee's part that I've seen just in the year or so that I've been on the board, that has, if we were to do the compare and contrast, to being more in the loop with what's going on. An example is today we got a couple of emails that I wouldn't have normally seen. And these kinds of communications are happening. This is stuff that's going on, which isn't necessarily information for tonight's meeting, but this is a thing going on. Another example of staffing issues that she's talked to us about has been very helpful, just to sort of being more inclusive with the process of, she's in here every day for 25 hours a day. I'm only here when I show up, and so she's helped me a lot to bring me into the building and connect me to the staff, in that I'm away all day. I have a job elsewhere, and it's been very helpful. So I would say in that regard, I can only imagine what the next year is going to be like. It's going to even be better. So far it's been really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Yeah, and I've told Renee a few times that when she started out, she said that she really wanted to have transparency and harmony and community and communication. And I just see her doing that again and again in obvious ways and in subtle ways, behind the scenes, and really straightforward.
So many subtle ways, isn't there?
Yeah.
I agree.
And I just really appreciate the way you've been working, Renee. I feel that it's very inclusive, and I feel that it's very transparent. I don't feel like there are all these things going on behind my back that I don't know about. I feel like I'm really included and informed in everything. So I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you. Well, and feedback for you guys. I mean, that's one of the things we talked about is how we can do this better. I mean, how you can function as a board is the model of all of the boards and committees in this town, and how this communication can work so that we can, function well for our community. And you guys have done an outstanding job. And like you said, we've been faced with a couple controversial issues where in the past you may have floundered a little bit, had some issues. I saw you guys come together and you worked as a board, as a unit, and that was impressive. And that's how we make this work. And I think that improves the entire, organization as a whole, and I think it helps all the way down, through the staff, through the other boards and committees, and the community in general, just to see a strong unit together that's working hard for this community. So, good things have happened.
Yeah, I want to put my 2 cents in. that, yeah, I think it's working well. I think it's you know, I think I've learned that Renee will continue to work really hard, and that sometimes when we want to tell her that she needs to cut back, we have to be very explicit about it, and basically just communicate in really direct ways of like,
Right.
what is like, don't be obsessing about that.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's like,
Right.
it's, we know that you're, you know, it's all good, but you need to stay healthy.
Right. Absolutely.
And just like you're concerned about the road crew, our job is to be concerned
Right.
about
Yeah. Well,
everybody.
And the wonderful thing is
yes,
that
yeah.
Joy is here and also a very equally motivated, strong work ethic, and will be a wonderful complement to this organization. So I feel it's almost a weight off my shoulders just to have her here and to know that we got a good path moving forward. So.
Yeah, I'll say, you know, a couple of things. One is I get to talk with Renee a little bit more than I talk with others because I guess my responsibilities, and I can see some conflict occasionally, kind of, you know, not necessarily between us, but I can see some conflict, and I feel comfortable sort of, oh, maybe, what do you think? And then I listen to what you have to say. So I think there's some good communication happening. It could always be better. I see Renee is very, thinks about the rest of the town, you know, highway crew and all that. And I have a little worried, like, gee, you know, you have to do that. That's your position. But at the same time, you have to get people to be doing the right thing too. You can't just, you know, be too easy. But I don't see that at all. So that was a concern of mine in the beginning, and I don't see that at all. I see Renee, while she's been very busy trying to get all this stuff done by herself, the, day-to-day things, then all of a sudden she surprises me and talks about, like, hey, next year, or this is what we need to be, this is where we need to be going. So that sort of vision is good to hear. And there's been a couple of times where I've been surprised or pleasantly surprised. I was like, I didn't even think of that. That's right. So I think she's holding me anyways, personally accountable for some things, which is good. And so I think generally overall, it feels like things are good. We can continue to work at it. I think we all have the right motivation. Today's discussion on the 4th of July, I thought went well in that there was conflict there, but yet, you could feel people starting to work it out. So, that's good, because there'll always be some conflict, and there'll always be people who aren't happy about certain decisions, and that's part of the job. But if people are heard, I think this board is started off saying we're going to make sure that, everybody gets a chance to be heard, and I know Renee supports that too. So I think we'll keep working at it and hold ourselves accountable. That's important. Joy's new eyes on it, so I encourage you to say what's on your mind and what you see, and it'll be interesting to have different eyes on it, new perspective. So
I think it's always good to address issues head on. I mean, right away before they become a bigger
Right.
issue. And so
Right.
communication is key, and being open about issues. I mean, there's always going to be times where you guys disagree or we disagree, but let's talk it out, hear the different perspectives, and always move forward in the best interest of the town.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think that what Bob said about discernment and disagreement is really what democracy is about.
Right.
And, we none of us are comfortable with it personally. It's always hard to disagree. It doesn't feel good.
Right.
But in the end, it's better to put it out there and in respectful ways.
Right. I think I saw it happen in this room tonight, you know, even on the discussion with the fire department and how we celebrate Independence Day. And I think maybe some people came into this room with a preconceived notion of how they felt about it. But I think they also took the time to listen and to hear the other perspectives. And I think we came to a place that was a little closer in the middle, where we weren't so set on one way or the other, that maybe there's a way to meet somewhere.
Okay, so, we'll see how town meeting goes. And,
And then we have,
and then,
at
I
least
think
we have one
that'll
more
be-
meeting before that.
Yeah, but then there'll be a chance to sort of stop and say, what are
weeks
our
from
next steps? Do we take any more formal steps like we did? And it might not be a bad idea. I'm certainly open to it, what the board wants or what Renee and now Joy might be interested in doing. Any other comments? Town administrator report?
I think I emailed you. You guys had talked about a mowing contract, and if we wanted to put that out to bid. Walls, who have been doing our mowing, they did present what their proposed pricing is, and I did acknowledge that we are considering, that the board is considering, putting it out to bid. And so he said that he tried to itemize everything on one page of all of our, all the mowing that we do. So he said you could use this as part of your RFP if you needed to do that information. So he tried to put it all together, with the exception of the cemetery amount. He tried to put it all in here so you could see and the amounts. He said they hadn't increased in a few years, and so there is a 3% increase reflected on that. So it's...
Any discussion on that?
I think they've done a really good job, but I do think we kind of owe it to taxpayers to just put it out there, and see if anybody responds and what their response. I would say, I don't know that we need to put a lot of work into creating the RFP. It might be good to maybe look at some RFPs that maybe other communities have used to contract those kinds of services. But, I certainly have no problem. I think they've done a really good job, and they're, I think, amenable to doing some extra things sometimes when we need it. But I do think it's just good practice to do that, so.
And when I spoke to Bob last week, he wanted to know who to contact. I told him we were going to bid. I told him that the board thought we should, as we do with everything, and he was perfectly fine with that as well. So I don't think he's miffed in any way.
Well, and he understood it. He goes like, of course I don't like it, but he goes, I understand it. He goes, so I tried to make this so it was clear.
Great.
And he goes, you're welcome to use that information.
Very generous.
So,
Nice. Don't put the prices in it, though.
I think it is a good idea to go out to bid, and because it sort of forces you to write it all down.
Yes.
This is what we are looking for. This is what, and because after a while, even when it works really good, which there's no indication it's not, that all of a sudden it becomes sort of natural, and things get added. You don't really notice, and but in my opinion, I think it would be good. But I think I'd leave it up to Renee to decide if this is the year to actually go and do it. Maybe we do a little groundwork, and if we don't this year, let's really plan on it next year. Or if you think you've got the time and the wherewithal to do it, then I would say let's go ahead and do it. There's no,
Because their contract runs through June 30th?
No,
Yeah.
I don't think so.
What is it?
it must start. Oh,
No, yes,
okay.
it already ran out.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
and I don't mean to be pressure. I think either way, I would be all right. But I would think, we'll remember this, and next year we'll definitely want to do it.
Well, I
for
think
sure.
that's something then to consider is
Yeah.
what's the contract period that you want it to be? Should it follow the fiscal year, or should it follow the seasonality of the work that they do?
Right.
It may be difficult to get an accurate quote from people who aren't familiar with the properties that they're
Right,
Yes,
right.
that's
maintaining.
But that's why we might want to, I mean, if we are gonna sign a contract for it with them, what's the time period that it's gonna be? And let's think about it in terms of, when it would be appropriate to go out for bid, so that other contractors can see what it is that they're bidding
Yeah,
on.
right, because now you couldn't, right? If you were
Well, they can look on
two
Google
towns
Earth.
away, but you'd have a hard time looking
Yeah.
around and
Yeah.
seeing what it's like.
Yeah. A lot of the contractors are probably already trying to
Yeah.
nail down their
Yes,
work for the
they are.
season, because we're getting close
Yeah.
to the April, whenever they start. Yeah. So what is that? Did I get a general feeling that yes this year, no this year?
I heard that if there's capacity for you to pursue it, go for it.
Uh-huh.
If it gets prioritized low and you don't get to it, we support that as well.
Uh-huh.
That's what I heard.
Okay.
And I would agree with
Regardless,
that.
we're gonna have to make a decision for,
Yeah.
Yes.
This
Pretty
one.
soon.
Right.
Yeah.
this one quite
Right.
soon.
Right, yeah. And if we put it out to bid, we need to be able to have someone probably, set time where someone can walk around with the
Yeah.
different properties. I mean, if they aren't aware, there's gonna need to be someone so that they can see what they're bidding on.
So potentially, if we were to not do it this year, but planned on doing it for next year, in September, you might actually put it
Right.
out there, and then people can walk around and actually see the grass growing.
Right. But that's why we should figure out if we're gonna sign a contract with Wall,
Right.
what's the time period? that
Well, I
we're-
think it would, seems like it would go seasonality versus
The season
budget
for
to
them.
budget.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you put it out, you could write your RFP in the fall and invite people to come, because next spring it'll
Right.
start, yeah.
Right. Okay.
Does that sound all right?
Oh, so their contract ended in the fall when they stopped mowing?
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Right.
it starts, okay, got it.
But
Okay.
the way they bill it out is in 7 installments.
Yes.
Yeah.
I almost think, just for, to keep everybody kind of happy, we move forward with the proposal and then work on it for the next year or figure it out.
But don't wait until now
Right.
to do
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
No,
Absolutely.
Come up with a plan and do
Yeah,
it during
yeah.
the summer.
Right.
Yeah.
What did we say about the rec fields as well? Would that be
That's
not?
off that quote.
That was not included.
No,
in
I know
this.
that, but
Yeah.
I'm saying, so the following year, so 2019, would that include in whatever that are,
It could be a piece of it, you could,
will
and
we
so
add that to this?
potentially
No,
this,
the plan is to buy a mower.
Plan is to buy a mower.
Wait,
right,
They're
right.
separated.
What?
I would say we have to, it might be a proposal to buy a mower.
Well, it
But
would come
let-
out of fundraising funds.
Yeah, but it still includes the idea of continuing to subcontract to somebody to do it, and.
So I know Tom was in that mix, that conversation a
Right,
little bit.
right,
Right.
but I
Yeah,
mean,
we
I
discussed
think
this.
it's like, is that a select board decision, is that a rec committee decision?
Well, there was
Is
money
there a
put in the
proposal?
budget for
Right,
that,
for
I
this
think.
year.
Right,
Right,
that could cover
right,
that,
right.
potentially.
But to move ahead and say we're buying a mower, I feel like, well, let's have that discussion well ahead of, or, really understand what we're getting into before next budget season.
Well, we should be doing that. I didn't realize the contract had run out.
I didn't either.
Nobody did.
Right.
Until Bob contacted us.
Right,
So,
but we're talking about, I'm talking about the buying a mower for Bissonnet Field. That's what you're talking about.
right.
Right? And we're buying that mower this year?
No.
Well-
So who's gonna, what
No, we are.
mower is
I'd love.
Tom gonna use to mow it?
Well, that would be the plan going forward. He didn't quote the Bissonnet Fields in this.
Right,
right,
Because when we
right.
had the conversation early during budget season, I informed everybody that was the plan, and we budgeted the labor for that.
Yes,
Got it.
Right.
but I assumed that it was labor and equipment, that it was a subcontract to Tom, that, he was gonna go up there with his mower and mow it.
No.
Oh,
No,
They're gonna use fundraising money you talked about
right.
for the mower.
Yeah, because we talked about the amount of time that mower would probably last, which would be greater than, say, these commercial mowers, because it's just used up there
Right.
a lot less. I remember having that discussion.
where's it gonna,
Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess we'd have to figure all that out, Where,
Well, I think
They have
what
it,
I'm
yeah.
hearing is, think the board is amenable. I think it was described that the mowing for those fields are a little different than,
Yes.
you know, the
Yeah, so-
cemetery or other places.
A little more specific.
But it would be good when the rec committee thinks they've got their plan, they come over and here's what we're gonna do. We wanna do this. Here's how much labor it'll be. Here's where we'll store it and whatnot. So,
I thought I kind of did that.
there was some
spelled that out.
discussion, but it was in the middle of the budget, so I don't think
Yeah, I
there was.
really didn't feel like, I mean, I
And it
think
was
what
left.
we agreed was that Tom would end up needing to be an employee,
Right.
you know, he's,
Right.
and that,
And we wanted to
but that-
budget the full amount, what that would be, so
What-
we would understand it.
yeah.
They did have a location for storing the
Mhm.
mower already lined up with Brad Wayner had
Right,
offered
that's
to
right, yeah.
utilize his space for that.
So, I mean, when it gets closer to the time, but, I mean, we're almost in the middle of February, with the contract having run out, I mean, I think now is the time, and we can go back and pay them through June 30. But I think the
Well,
rec
the
commission was
committee
all on
should
board.
Decide exactly what they're doing and just.
But with this contract is just for, it's for everything else, right, with
Right,
Wall.
it-
So I think we're all agreed that we're gonna go ahead and
Okay.
sign a
Yeah.
contract with them for this.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But we have to have the plan in place to purchase a mower.
that
That
doesn't have
doesn't-
anything
that
to do
doesn't
with
include-
Wall.
That's not
Doesn't
a-
have anything to do with Wall.
Well, it would if we didn't buy the mower.
Well,
Right.
they didn't
Well, so
include it
I
in
think
a,
the rec committee needs to say, here, they're not in this contract, they need to come and say, here's what we're doing.
Right, right.
Right, well, I thought I did that, but if you need them to
Ah.
come in, that's fine. We can have a more formal discussion with them, but I was kind of relaying the message that that's what they and I, as kind of the organizer of Bissonnet Fields,
Is planning to do.
was the plan.
So I'm a little confused. So you know that it's not included in that?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
and
All
we
right.
included in the budget paying
X amount of money,
X amount
yeah.
of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we did not include in the budget purchase of a mower.
Right.
Because they decided to do
Because the
it
money's
with
already
with
in for
fundraising.
fundraising.
Yeah.
Yeah, is what they had talked about during that time anyway.
That's how I remember
So,
it.
and so it would be good to have a really brief discussion. So if
And
they
we're
buy a
good.
mower, is it then the town's
It's the town's mower, right?
mower if they, yeah, because then we'll take care of it, we'll
I mean,
maintain it.
yeah, who's gonna maintain it?
Yeah.
And,
And that,
and
but
then when
this
it
will be,
becomes time to replace it,
we'll have to,
you know,
yeah.
it's an asset. We
Yeah.
have to list it on our,
Yeah, so
Yeah.
there would be a line item created under the recreation budget of, you know, for maintenance and
Yeah.
repair and maintenance for that equipment, repair and maintenance.
Okay? So you know what you're doing there. You're gonna move
Yes.
forward with it, I
Move forward
guess.
with this, I guess.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. All right.
Anything else on select board forum? Or, sorry, town administrator report?
I don't think so, other than highlighting what we'd already talked about earlier in the meeting is welcoming Joy to
Yes.
to the organization, and then John Titus for the highway. So we are finally full staffed.
Great. Next item is select board forum. Does anybody have anything they wanna?
I have one. I was pleased to hear back from Kurt Pruhl from CVU. I talked to them last summer or fall about maintenance to Lyman Park, ditching around the outside to drain it better, and they're actually going to cut the softball diamond out to make it an actual playing surface. So that work will be done in the spring, summer. They're going to take care of the softball field in the spring, first thing, but hopefully before the girls play. And when it dries out, they're going to do the ditching around it.
Nice.
I hope they
So-
will follow best management practices when they do that ditching and reseed it and put up erosion control, because it isn't a ditch. It's stream runoff too that's coming down through there. So, I mean, I don't think they need a stream alteration permit, but, you know, they should reseed it, and, it should be a grass line ditch in there.
Yeah, I don't think they're even doing the, on the south side, is that what you're referring to? There's very little work being done there. It's mainly the east and north sides.
Okay, yeah.
But it's,
Yeah.
I believe it's Greg Lyman doing the work, so I'm sure
Okay,
he's familiar
okay,
with all of that.
okay.
Good. Anything else?
We all got maybe an email about the annual Town Officers Education Conference happening. If you didn't.
And that was a little different than what I maybe described other classes, things I've gone to. This is a little different.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
It is. So Lake Morey is April 3rd and or Capitol Plaza, April 10th. If you didn't get it, I'll forward it to you if you'd like. But it's put on every year, I think 75, 76, 78, 7 years now in a row, something like that, by UVM. I've gone to it in the past.
Extension service, isn't it?
Correct, yeah. I've gone to it in the past. I don't go every year, but I've gone to it in the past. And there's always something you learn from it, and there's always somebody you meet, which is always really kind of get out of your own bubble and hear other people's problems that are really yours, but they're so easy for you to figure out their problems sometimes. Anyway, it's nice. They're great conversations. It's a day-long thing. They're great conversations.
Anything else?
So on something like that, if I wanted to go, do I pay out of pocket or does
Usually we provide a little bit of.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's one in Hawaii.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
I was thinking about.
Possible.
I think I
draw a
worked,
line.
when I went in the past, I think I just worked it out with Missy.
Yeah.
I believe is what I did.
You.
They're pretty. I mean, the VLCT is.
Yeah, it's $65, I
Yeah,
think,
right.
if you
Yeah.
if you get in before the deadline.
And
little
what
bit
will
more.
be good if you do end up going is coming back and telling us, if there were any highlights or sharing any information. That would be good.
You'll get a whole
And
notebook
if there's
full
a
of
difference in
good
pricing,
stuff.
we would pay the member rate because we
Right.
have a membership
Yeah.
to VLCT. So.
So I had one
Did you
item.
get the email? Do you want me to forward it to you?
I think I've got it.
Okay.
And
Just can't today.
Is it this?
Yeah.
okay.
I didn't open it, to be honest with you. So I'm not sure what time it came, but that's about right.
Okay.
So I had one item. I think it's not a secret that I'm involved with the United Church, but this is not coming from me. I was.
Don't kill the messenger.
Don't kill the messenger. I was approached by
Foreshadowing here.
someone at the church who the church puts on a monthly community meal. It's free. If there are any donations, it usually goes to the food shelf or it goes to the youth group, which this year is going to Puerto Rico to do work. And I'll just point out that you don't have to be a member of the church. Most of the kids aren't that are part of the youth group. It's pretty good. They've gone to Boston, New York. This year they're going to Puerto Rico. And so different people put on their community meal. It's on a Friday night. And it looks like on May 25th, the Planning Commission is helping to put the meal on. And so they're asking if maybe the Selectboard might want to participate in that.
With the
too.
planning commission?
With the Planning Commission.
That'd be fun.
So I'll put it out and let everybody see it and just let me know if it's something you think you'd want to do and if we can get at least a couple people who are interested. It's usually 5:30 to 7.
It's usually Friday nights, right?
It's Friday nights.
The last Friday of the month.
It's the last Friday of the month. So they've been doing it for 3 or 4 years now. So I'll put out an email. If anybody's interested, just let me know. And if we can get at least a couple people, I'll say, yep, we'll help out. And again, I don't think if the funds if there's any donations that come in, they usually go to the food shelf, but sometimes they might say this month is going to go to the youth group or something like that. So I'll put that out if you wanted to come or join. Anybody would be invited. Anybody associated with Select Board, I guess. I think they've had another group from town do it too. Maybe I don't want to say if it was the Forest.
Oh,
Forest there was another group that did it, community group.
Oh, I actually have something.
So did you have something? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, last Thursday night, I think the Town Forest Committee, so the town, you might have seen it on Front Porch Forum, but the Hinesburg Town Forest was selected for participation in services that are being provided by a consultant to work on management issues. So an outside consultant came in and worked with a steering committee that the Town Forest Committee made that had representatives of the Economic Development Committee, Conservation Commission, Trails Committee, to see what people like and want to see happening in the Hinesburg Town Forest. So they had a bunch of boards set up. People could put their dots on it, but you can also do the survey online. So really want to encourage people to go online, and it should be on our town website, the link to it. I'm saying to Aaron, if you can do that.
I think I got an email on that.
From Pat Maynor.
Yeah, if I didn't, I'll make sure.
Yeah. So I think she put something on Front Porch Forum. We could put it on our Facebook page. Encourage people to, it'll be, I think, a year-long process. So there'll be a lot of back and forth with talk to people on the Town Forest Committee or the members of the steering committee. They spent, the steering committee spent the whole day with these consultants up there in the town forest. You know, so it's good.
Anything else for Select Board Forum? Next item is to review 2 minutes. We have last month's meeting, January 29th. And then we had last year's annual meeting, which apparently we've never, I know we reviewed the minutes, but we've never officially, as far as we know, approved them. So we should do, maybe we'll do January's first. So if there's a motion.
I can make a motion to approve January 29th.
January 29th, yep.
2018.
I second it.
It's great.
I think I looked at
I
that,
second
yeah.
it, yes.
Are there any changes or clarifications? Good?
I didn't have any.
Yep, I didn't see anything either.
All right. Yeah. All those in favor of approving the minutes from January 29th, say aye.
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 Aye. So those are approved. Now, dust off those brains and take a look at the town meeting minutes from March 7th, 2017. Hopefully we had a chance to look at it. I can say I looked at them and remembered a few things and noted a few things we could do better this year, but the minutes appear to be capture the actions and certainly the motions and the votes. Is there a motion to accept these
So moved.
minutes?
Second.
All right.
So I have a question that I'm on there to sign it, but I wasn't a select board member at that time.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Were you there?
Yes, I was there.
She was there, but just
I
not
even
as
spoke.
Select board member.
Right.
Yeah,
But
the vote was the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
right, but
so
I think you would approve the minutes.
Would she though? If she wasn't?
Either way, it doesn't matter. There's 4 of us.
Right,
Yeah.
and you guys will
Moot point.
definitely have your
Yeah.
majority.
Were there any corrections you thought that the board should make?
I did not see any.
Okay. Anyone else?
No, that's interesting. Because, well, in theory, you could have
2.
just 3
Yeah,
people.
Yeah,
good,
that's less
yeah.
long you got a
Yeah.
quorum to,
That was kind of in the back of my mind, but I wasn't
Yeah.
going to go there. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think abstaining would be okay,
Okay.
and I would probably feel more comfortable on that. So all those in favor of?
Which means you'd want to fix this.
Well, she
At the
can be a,
bottom.
no,
Yeah.
you know what, she cannot vote. She can abstain from the vote, but you can end up signing it because the majority have signed it. I think that's how it goes.
She was at the meeting though.
Yeah.
Right.
She
So
just
she's
throws
going to
it as a
abstain
select
from
board.
the
She's just
vote
abstaining
yeah.
from the
that of approving them,
minutes.
but or just don't sign it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
see
okay.
my-
Yeah, yeah.
Just
All right.
abstaining from the whole thing.
So all those in favor of approving these minutes, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain.
So noted.
So that's 4 and 1 abstention. Did you catch that?
I got
I
that.
wanted to discuss Article 14 again.
Should we
Has
read it back?
nothing to do with it.
Should we read it back to you?
Oh, yeah. That was a funny one, wasn't it? And
Oh,
it
yes.
was-
There it
captured
is.
pretty well, yeah.
That poor Frank got bit.
Joy doesn't know what we're talking about, but you
He's
should.
just as well off, Joe.
Yeah. Article 14 last year is going to go down in history.
Oh my gosh,
All
it's
the
still
words are
there.
important and how you.
It is, it's what
That's the
happened.
motion.
Attacks by law enforcement officers.
Remember what I was talking about?
Regardless of the location of the bite, I thought they
That's the
changed it.
Article 14.
Well, no,
We
this
got
is
a good
just what
chuckle
we.
out of it.
This could be the start of your book. For the next 25 years. I can guarantee there'll be 25 things to put in there.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
All right, so that's good. The next item on the agenda is consider approving the warrants.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So they're here for anybody to review.
Signatures for your minutes.
Oh, so you got
Clean
one that
copy.
doesn't
Took the
say
draft
draft.
out,
Oh,
yes.
good.
It's like you're anticipating.
You know, just in case.
Just in case.
Just in case.
And then the next item on the agenda is a possible motion to go into executive session. It is expected to be a short, I'm pulling out my cheat sheet. Hold on. The purpose of going into executive session is to just discuss the final contract with the union. And Renee, we will go into, the expectations go into executive session, 5 of us with Renee and Joy, to discuss the final contract. And if there's a possibility, if we want to approve the contract, we could come out of executive session to approve it. So we would need first a motion to note that this is, premature public discussion concerning this contract could put the town at a substantial disadvantage.
I can make that motion for you if you need me to read it, or I can just agree to what you just said.
I think that would be okay.
Yep.
Second.
All right, so all those in favor to say that this would put us at a disadvantage, say aye.
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 Aye. None opposed?
So then shall I make
I'll
a,
move the board
there you go.
enter into executive session under provisions of 1 VSA, section 313A1,
Second?
including Renee and Joy.
Okay, and just to clarify, we'll stop the broadcast. We'll go into executive session. If there are any actions when we come out of executive session, we'll record those in the minutes. So this will end the public broadcast. Okay, so we have the second motion to go into executive session. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Still not opposed. So that's it.
Say goodnight, Gracie.
So what's that?